Hola, ¿qué tal? In this video we're going to revise Unit 7, el impacto positivo de la inmigración en la sociedad española. As you already know, we will revise the topics, grammar and vocabulary. When it comes to the topic, we're going to look at Spain as a migratory destination, if Spain really lacks sport people and sailors, and we will finish with a proper Arabic dessert. From a grammar point of view, we will revise ser and estar, object pronouns, both direct and indirect, and the passive voice. Finally, as usual, I'll give you some tips about vocabulary. Alright then, let's warm up with some grammar. When new students come to me and I ask them what is the difference between ser and estar, the usual response is, okay, ser is permanent and estar is not permanent. And it's when I deep breath and ask, okay, if ser is for permanent things, why the time which is the least permanent thing in life is expressed with ser? Oh, yes, absolutely, oh, yes. So, the difference between ser and estar is not permanent or not permanent, it's the uses and only the uses. We will do this quickly because, as usual, if you need to learn more about ser and estar, I will leave you a link in the description box. I was saying the difference is the uses. Let's start with the estar because it only has three uses you must remember. Okay, so we use it to express location, where somebody or something is. When we are expressing an action in progress, I mean when we are using ing, gerund, which implies there is an action ongoing. And when describing a not permanent feature. Only when we are describing, only then we need to think if it is permanent or not permanent. And even so, it's not always like this. But again, I am not extending that the explanation here. You have another video. And we use ser when we are expressing the hour, the day and the date, place of origin, occupation, nationality, religious or political affiliation, the material something is made of, possession, relationship, certain impersonal expressions like it's important, it's better, it's worse. And the next is an exception to the rule about location. Okay, where an event is taking place is expressed with ser, if we are speaking about a concert or a meeting or a party. And finally, when we are describing essential qualities, when something is permanent. Let's see some examples with the estar first. Location. Numerosos trabajadores extranjeros están en el sector agrícola del sur de España. La comunidad inmigrante está en barrios que antes estaban despoblados. Action. Las familias inmigrantes están enriqueciendo la diversidad cultural del país. Los inmigrantes están ayudando a mantener los servicios públicos esenciales. Description. Los españoles estamos más abiertos a otras culturas. ¿Estoy más multiculturalizado? Ser now. The hour, day and date. La integración cultural es hoy un tema clave. Origin. Una parte importante de los inmigrantes en España son de origen marroquí. Occupation. Muchos inmigrantes son trabajadores esenciales en la economía española. Nationality. Una parte significativa de los inmigrantes en España son ciudadanos marroquíes. Religious or political affiliation. España es un país aconfesional, aunque culturalmente católico. Material something is made of. Algunos platos tradicionales españoles son de ingredientes de origen musulmán. Possession. La responsabilidad de mejorar las condiciones laborales en la pesca es del gobierno español. Relationship. Muchos deportistas españoles son hijos de inmigrantes que crecieron en España. Impersonal expressions. Es importante mejorar las condiciones en los refugios de inmigrantes. Event. La feria gastronómica intercultural es en Madrid. And finally, permanent description. La gastronomía española es más variada gracias a la influencia de la cocina musulmana. Okay, let's move on to the object pronouns now. So, what exactly is an object pronoun? Let's look at an example first. I can say, I see Maria, or I can say, I see her. That her is the object pronoun. It replaces the noun to avoid repetition. In Spanish, we have two types, direct and indirect. The direct object is the person or thing that receives the action of the verb directly. The direct pronouns are me is me, you is te, him or her is le for both, or lo, especially masculine, and la, feminine. Us is nos, you all, you plural is os, and them, les for both masculine and feminine, and los for masculine and las for feminine. The indirect object answers to whom or for whom the action is done. The pronouns are me, te, le, nos, os, les. Notice that for him or her is just le, and for them is les, not option here. Let's go to the position of object pronouns. If there is one verb, the pronoun goes before the verb. I agree, it's weird. Let's see the examples. For you hear them is to les oyes before the verb. Or Carmen read it as Carmen lo lee before the verb. Or I see you, te veo, or yo te veo. And if there are two verbs, like with reflexives, you can put it either before the first verb or attached to the infinitive after the two verbs, before or after. For example, you have to do it. You can say lo tienes que hacer or tienes que hacerlo, or I'm doing it. Lo estoy haciendo or estoy haciéndolo. Both are correct. And be careful with this. After preposition, Spanish uses the normal subject forms, with the exception of me becomes me, and you becomes ti instead of tú or yo. And we have an exception of the exception with con. They change to conmigo and contigo instead of conmigo, conti. Okay? Let's look at a few examples. For example, estoy pensando sobre ella. I'm thinking about her. It's not sobre la, it's sobre about she. O estoy haciéndolo por ellos. For they, not for them, literally. O ¿por qué no vienes con nosotros? Why don't you come with us? It would be with we. O este es un paquete para ti. Now let's move on to the indirect object pronouns. I will repeat that they are used to indicate to whom or for whom something is done. Notice that with these pronouns, you don't choose between la or lo. It's always le or les in plural. There are verbs that trigger these indirect object pronouns. For example, comprar o traer o dar, decir, enviar. And let's see some examples. Me compré un coche, te traigo flores, siempre nos da regalos, os he enviado un paquete, les escribe cartas cada mes, o te estoy explicando la lección. A very common mistake involves the verb decir, to say or to tell. In English, we say I told her, but in Spanish, it's wrong to say la dije. It must be le dije. I might hear people from Madrid saying that. I am sorry, madrileño, that's wrong. Okay, let's go now to learn about the position of these pronouns. As with direct pronouns, if there is one verb, the pronoun goes before. For example, I will write you, yo te escribiré, or Carmen explain to us, Carmen nos explicas, or you tell me, tú me cuentas. If there are two, you can put it before or after the infinitive. For example, tienes que decirle o le tienes que decir, o te estoy diciendo o estoy diciéndote. Again, both are correct. What happens when you have both a direct and indirect pronoun? Well, in that case, the indirect goes first, followed by the direct. And the position? Well, as you can guess, when we have just one verb before, for example, do you give it to me? It would be me lo das. And when you have two verbs, both pronouns appear before or after two verbs, but the order stays the same. Can you give it to me? ¿Me lo puedes dar? ¿O puedes dármelo? But wait, there is a final twist. When you have le or les before lo, la, los or las, les becomes se. Let's see some examples. I give it to her becomes se lo doy, or I give it to them it becomes se lo doy as well. Or she won't tell it to him, no se lo dirá, or I will send it to her, se lo mandaré. This happens not only because it sounds weird, but because lelo and lela means stupid. We don't want that. This can sound a bit vague, so we often add a clarification like a Ana, a mis hermanos, a Pedro afterwards. Okay, time for the passive voice now. The passive voice is used when the action or the thing is more important than who does it, or when the agent is unknown or irrelevant. Pause. What is the agent? Is it the person, animal, or thing that performs the action, and it's identified by the preposition by in English and por in Spanish. We continue. The passive voice in Spanish is formed with the verb ser plus a past participle. This past participle must agree in gender and number with the noun it refers to. Notice it in the examples. La inmigración es valorada por su contribución a la Sociedad Española, o las especias eran utilizadas por la cocina musulmana en la península ibérica. El sector pesquero fue afectado por la falta de mano de obra inmigrante. Muchos platos españoles fueron influenciados por la cocina musulmana. La inmigración valorada. Especias utilizadas. El sector afectado. Platos influenciados. But one last thing before starting with the topics. The reflexive passive, which is very used and natural in Spanish. We have also the reflexive passive. It expresses that something is done, but doesn't say who does it because the agent is unknown or unimportant or general. The structure is se plus a verb in third person singular or plural, but plus the object. And remember, the verb agrees with the subject in number. For example, la inmigración se valora por su contribución a la sociedad española. O las especias de origen musulmán se utilizaban en la península ibérica. O se redujo la actividad pesquera por la falta de inmigrantes. O se promoverá una inmigración más justa. Now, the question, are they interchangeable? No, not always. When they are interchangeable, when the agent is not mentioned, or the sentence is general and factual, or the subject is a thing or an abstract idea. For example, you can say se valora la inmigración por su impacto económico, or you can say la inmigración es valorada por su impacto económico. Both are correct, natural and acceptable in an exam. When they are not interchangeable. Okay, when you need to mention the agent. Also with certain verbs, loss, change, existence. This is very common with topics like fishing and labor shortage. And in very formal or academic analysis, surpassive sounds more deliberate and controlled, especially in essays. For example, la inmigración es valorada por el gobierno, as we saw. Se han perdido trabajadores. La influencia musulmana ha sido reconocida por historiadores. So, when to choose which? Okay, some tips. Use the reflexive passive when generalizing social trends. It simply means talking about what usually happens in society in general, without saying who exactly does it. Also, if you want to sound natural and fluent, or when writing about policies or effects, it means that you are not describing one action by one person. And use the literal passive voice or passive when you want to add por, the agent, or when you need a clearly formal tone, or you want to show grammatical range. What is the best strategy? Mix both in the same paragraph to show control and sophistication. That's the best thing you can do. Now it's time for the topics. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, we will learn about Spain as a migratory destination, if there is a lack for people and sailors, and we will finish with delicious Arab desserts. Very quickly, let's look at the background, because for centuries Spain was more a country of emigration than immigration. Millions of Spaniards emigrated to Latin America, Argentina, Cuba, Mexico, Venezuela, and to Europe in search of work. But starting in the 1980s, Spain changed from being a country of immigration to a country of immigration due to democratization after 1975, joined the European Union, and a rapid economic growth, where there was a demand for labor in agriculture, construction, and services. So main groups arriving during this time were Moroccans, the closest and most traditional group, Latin Americans, and Eastern Europeans, and Sub-Saharan Africans, and more recent arrivals, often irregularly. The 2008 economic crisis slowed immigration and caused some immigrants to return home. Although since 2015, with economic recovery and global migration crisis, new flows have arrived. And today, well, the five main migrant communities in Spain today are Moroccans, people from Hispanic countries, from Romania, and in recent years, immigrants from United Kingdom and Italy. Let's break these groups down in numbers. The population in Spain in 2026 is around 49 million and almost 500,000, and is expected to continue growing. Approximately 40.1% of the population are legal immigrants. The most numerous group is Hispanic Americans, almost 2 million. In second place, Moroccans with almost 970,000 people. Next, Romanians, around 609,000. and then Italians around 345,000, and finally British 266,000. Now that we know who the main immigrant groups are, let's talk about where they actually live in Spain, because they're not spread out evenly. They live in Madrid, Cataluña, la Comunidad Valenciana, Murcia, Almería, Málaga, las Islas Baleares, and las Islas Canarias. Let's start with Madrid. Madrid is the place with the largest number of immigrants in the country. You'll find people from very diverse regions here, especially Latin Americans, Eastern Europeans, and Africans. Catalonia has the second largest immigrant population in Spain. Here the main groups are Moroccans, Latin Americans, and Romanians. Again, big cities and industry means more work opportunities. La Comunidad Valenciana is strongly diverse. You will find a lot of British immigrants and Latin Americans here. Murcia and Almería have a very high immigrant ratio, especially Moroccans, British and Latin Americans. Málaga is the Andalusian province that attracts the largest migrant population, Moroccans, British and Hispanic Americans. And finally, in the Balearic Islands, you'll find many British, Italians and Latin Americans. Meanwhile, Canary Island receive more Africans and Latin Americans. So now that we know where immigrants live, let's look at how well different groups integrate into Spanish society and which groups tend to face more difficulties. Let's go group by group. Latin Americans first. When it comes to language and culture, integration is usually much easier. They already share the Spanish language and many cultural references with Spain. Socially, they generally integrate quite well into the community, although they can still face stereotypes based on nationality, especially when it comes to lower skill jobs. In terms of education, their children usually adapt very quickly to the school system because of the shared language. And for employment, many work in hospitality, domestic services, and commerce. Some manage to achieve job stability and even start small businesses. Moroccans. So regarding language and culture, Arabic and Berber are predominant, although many do learn Spanish over time. The Muslim religion can also be a differentiating cultural factor. Social integration is often slower, mainly because of cultural and religious difference. However, the second generation usually adapts much better. One of the main challenges they face is discrimination and stereotypes, which can make integration more difficult. In terms of employment, many work in construction, agriculture, and services, although some experience job insecurity. For Romanians, language can be an initial barrier, but cultural and European proximity helps a lot. Socially, they tend to integrate gradually, and once again, the second generations that goes through the Spanish school system adapts very well. When it comes to employment, many work in construction, agriculture, and services, and some go on to start their own businesses. Now, Italians are very culturally close to Spain, which makes integration much easier. Many already speak Spanish or learn it very quickly. Unfair. Social integration very good, as they share many cultural, gastronomic, and family values with the Spaniards. In terms of employment, they often work in tourism or hospitality or their own businesses. They usually have stable jobs. And finally, let's talk about British immigrants. In terms of language and culture, many do not learn Spanish, which creates a much bigger language barrier. Because of this, many live in areas with a high concentration of foreigners and often don't move beyond those communities. Socially, they tend to form closed communities in certain regions, which limits their integration into everyday Spanish life. In education, British children often attend international schools, which reduces contact with Spanish students. And in terms of employment, many are retired or work in tourism and real estate, jobs where learning Spanish isn't strictly necessary. Next, we lack sport people and sailors. If it were not for immigrants, most of them African, it would not be difficult to eat fish in Spain. Spain is a major fishing power in Europe, representing 24.3% of the total EU fleet and generating around 181,000 jobs. However, there is not generational replacement in the fishing sector, and the future could be even worse as 40% of workers are close to retirement age. In 2026, Spain has almost 2.5 million employed people, yet many don't want to work in the fishing sector because their working days are very long, around 10 hours, physically demanding, and salaries vary depending on the catch. Some months fishermen may earn 2,000 euros, while in others they may earn as little as 800 euros. There is a huge demand for deckhands, and some boats have been left docked due to a lack of crew. At the same time, many immigrants in an irregular situation are forced to survive by working in the informal economy when they could be filling jobs where they are clearly needed. So what is the problem? The lack of political will to change legislation in order to make it easier for immigrant workers to access employment in this sector. This is why initiatives such as the Red Cross program in Alicante, Fishing for a Better Working Future, are helping immigrants in 3 key ways. By providing training courses to obtain the fisherman seaman qualification, by offering Spanish language classes to support integration, and by providing psychological support, as many participants have suffered trauma after dangerous sea journeys, enduring extreme hardship, and in some cases, losing friends or family members along the way. This program is already a success, as many participants have secured employment contracts in the fishing industry. In 2026, immigrants could make up as much as 50% of fishermen in Spain. Okay, let's move on to sport people. Is there a shortage of sports people in Spain? The answer is no. Does that mean my book is wrong? Again, the answer is no, but let's clear this up. In 2025, the Sport Statistics Yearbook, published by the Ministry of Education, Vocational Training and Sport, reports that employment linked to sport has grown by 3.4% compared with the previous year. The increase since 2018 is nearly 20%. Spain is widely recognized as a global sporting powerhouse, both in the dominance of its national teams and in the performance of individual athletes across a range of disciplines. So, what's going on? Okay, every quarter, the catalog of hard-to-fill occupations is published, and professional athletes and sport coaches always appear on it. In every city, indeed. This often gives rise to the myth that Spain lacks these profiles, when in reality they are included due to the agreement between the Spanish Public Employment Service, SEPE, and the Secretary of State for Sport in order to facilitate international signings. So I can't really talk about this as there is no information because the claim that there is a shortage of athletes is not accurate. Let's finish with the delicious Arabic dessert. Present-day Spanish gastronomy is, to a large extent, a reflection of the 8 centuries of Andalusi presence in the Iberian Peninsula. The Arabs didn't just introduce previously unknown ingredients, they also transformed agriculture through irrigation techniques that made it possible to grow new foods. We're talking about the period of Al-Andalus, from the years 711 to 1492. The Andalusis brought or popularized across the peninsula foods like rice, citrus fruits such as bitter orange, lemon, cane sugar, aubergine, spinach, almonds, spices like cumin, cinnamon, saffron, or coriander, and herbs and flavors such as mint and orange blossom water. Sweets of Arab origin are el turrón, alfajores, pestiños, and mazapans. Let's learn some dishes and recipes with Arab heritage by region. So let's start with Andalusia, the great hair of Al-Andalus. Some standout dishes include aubergine with honey, very typical sweet and savory Arab combinations, alboranía, medieval vegetable and spice stew, pestiños, fried in oil, then coated with honey and sesame seeds, and Andalusian alfajores, a sweet made with almonds, honey, and spices. La Comunidad Valenciana y Murcia, lands shaped by Arab irrigation. Notable dishes here include rice dishes, including paella. Rice cultivation was introduced by Muslims. Arroz con costra from Elche, or rice with a baked crust. Turrón, made with almonds and honey. Mazapan, almonds and sugar prepared using an Arab technique. Castilla-La Mancha. Here, the influence appears in dishes such as Toledo Mazapan, direct Andalusi legacy, ring-shaped biscuits and honey sweets, rollos fritos y dulces de miel, and the abundant use of cumin, anise seed, and saffron. In this region, the influence is most noticeable in bacon and spices. Las Islas Baleares. Arab heritage can be seen in early ensaimadas. Older versions of the recipe were made with honey, sweet cocas, and pastries filled with pumpkin jam, known as cabello de ángel, or with almond filling. The reason the islands were under Muslim rule for centuries. Now I'm hungry. Let's move on to the final part, vocabulary. Don't give up yet, we're almost there. To finish off, as usual, I'll show you the essential vocabulary for this topic. These are the minimum words you should know, but remember, the more you learn, the better. I'd also like to comment on a few really important vocabulary points you should definitely remember for this topic. First of all, el visado. There is a tendency among Spaniards to call it la visa, but that is not correct. Another warning, when you translate inhabitant, remember it's habitante, it's not inhabitante. Also, be careful when translating location. It's not locación, it's ubicación. An important word for this topic is, sadly, naufragar, to sink. And be careful as well with the spelling when conjugating huir, to flee. the I changes to Y, so pay close attention to that when you write it. It would be huyo, huyes, huye, huimos, huís, huyen. Okay, some useful adjectives you should highlight for this topic are hacinados or sin papeles. Important. There are also plenty of important expressions such as la atención sanitaria or buscarse la vida. Remember that la economía sumergida is black economy, and la mano de obra is workforce. Finally, I have to add one more important term that is not in your book, el relevo generacional. Please add it to your vocabulary. And that's all, ladies and gentlemen, about el impacto positivo de la inmigración en la sociedad española, a key topic where language and real-life issues come together. If this video helps you, click a like and subscribe for more A-Level Spanish revision. Nos vemos en el próximo video.